What's up, and welcome back to another episode of Keeping Up with the Commanders. I'm your host, Mason Kenahan, and I'm coming back to you after the Washington Commanders 37-20 loss to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in Week 1 of the NFL season. It was a very tough outing to watch if you were a Washington Commanders fan. It was probably not what many Commanders fans were expecting or hoping for heading into today's game. I mean, you look at the score, you only lose by 17, but it felt a lot worse than just losing by 17. It felt like this team was losing by 20 plus pretty much the entire game. It was pretty bad from the start on all ends of the football. It was the offense, it was a slow start for them. Defensively was one of the worst performances out of any defense this entire week from any NFL team. Special teams was a big issue as well. All three sides of the football struggled at some point this game, if not the entire game. So let's just jump right into it. We'll start with the main guy, QB1, JD5. Jayden today was, if you look at it from one point of view, it was a good performance. If you look at it from other point of views, it was a solid performance from Jayden Daniels. I wouldn't say it was incredible. I wouldn't say it was a great performance. I wouldn't really even say it was like a good performance from Jayden. I would say it was a solid performance. There were some good things. There were some bad things for him to work on, some things that you liked to see out of him. His final stat line here: 17 of 24 passing, 184 yards, no touchdowns, no picks, was sacked twice, passer rating of 93.1. He also had 16 carries for 88 yards and 2 touchdowns on the ground. For Jayden, it was a rough start at the beginning. Very first play of his NFL career was a screen pass to Brian Robinson. He throws a screen pass behind Robinson, and it actually turns out to be a fumble, and Robinson can't get on top of it. It's a loss of 15 yards as the ball goes out of bounds. So it was a rough start. The first opening drive for the Washington Commanders kind of just ended at that point because Jayden was inaccurate on the screen pass, similar to how he was inaccurate on his very first screen pass in the preseason. But again, that's just a little bit of the, pretty excited. That's whatever. It was one drive. Throughout the game, you could tell he was poised. He was comfortable for most of it. There were a few sacks that he took where maybe he could just throw the ball away or get to his hot routes quicker, especially when he was under pressure. But overall, it was just a solid performance. I think the thing that's going to be highlighted in Jayden Daniels' performances is his 16 carries. 16 carries. If he kept on with this pace, I think I saw a tweet from JP Finley. If he kept on with this pace and had 16 carries every game for the rest of the season, he'd have like 270 something runs or rushes as a quarterback in this season. The most ever was Lamar Jackson, who had 172, I believe. So that just shows how much Jayden used his legs today. And there were some times when it was good. Dan Quinn mentioned it in the press conference. Sometimes it was good, right? Daniels was extending plays. He was making big plays out of nothing where he was under pressure, could step up. There was no one in the middle of the field. He ran like for 15, 20 yards, picked up first downs. He got down, by the way. He was very safe with his body for the most part today. There were a couple of times when his helmet was flying off, which he definitely needs to get that fixed. I think it happened twice today. Definitely need to get that fixed because you do not want to be running without a helmet in the NFL. It's not going to end well. So Jayden was good taking care of his body for the most part, except a couple runs where he ran right up the middle for no reason. So I liked what I saw of Jayden. He needs to learn how to slide still. It was kind of funny seeing all the different types of ways he kind of just gave up his body and fell to the ground. He was like doing rolls. He was doing just like leaping onto the ground. It was kind of funny to see the variety of ways Jayden tried to slide without sliding. But beyond that, that was kind of the main thing for Daniels. He had the 2 rushing touchdowns, one in the third quarter, one in the fourth quarter for the Commanders. Yeah, it was overall solid performance. I want to mention his passing chart, which I posted on my Twitter at Mason_Kenahan if you want to follow me there. But his passing chart, he had one throw beyond 10 yards of the line of scrimmage. I'm not saying like a 110 plus yard completion. I'm saying he threw the ball one time more than 10 yards past the line of scrimmage. that was actually completed. He threw it only 3 times past 10 yards the entire game, which kind of shows a little bit of what Cliff Kingsbury is going to bring to this offense. It was a lot of screens. I swear, like, so you have 3 downs, right? One of those downs is going to be a run. One of those downs is going to be a screen, and one of those plays are going to be like a short curl route. That's pretty much what Cliff Kingsbury, and then he kind of mixed up those 3 in order pretty much every drive. That was pretty much what Cliff Kingsbury did with this offense. 7 of Jayden Daniels' 17 completions were from behind the line of scrimmage, or at or behind the line of scrimmage, which was good to note because, again, a lot of the stuff was between the 0 and 10 yards from the line of scrimmage. So that'll just show what Cliff kind of wants Jayden to do, which I think is interesting. We saw this in Arizona a little bit with Kyler Murray, a lot of screens, a lot of short stuff for Kyler. And Cliff has kind of just brought this over from Arizona. Again, it's only one game, so it's a small sample size, but I mean that's pretty much what Cliff has done. One thing that I was kind of not impressed with is the lack of deep throws, especially like down the sideline, which seems to be one of Jayden Daniels' strengths. I need to watch back the film to see if did he call up some plays for those deep routes down the sideline and they just weren't open. But the only time I can remember one of those plays was early on in the third quarter. It was the opening drive of the third quarter where Jayden threw a deep pass to Terry McLaurin, who had the step on his defensive back, was about 2 yards past his defensive back, and Daniels just kind of overthrew him. That was the only time I can remember him throwing something like super deep. But yeah, that's not great. So especially a guy that one of his strengths is throwing those deep passes with that deep ball, throwing only 3 passes beyond 10 yards in this game. Not good. Not good. In terms of the play calling. In terms of the stats, I'll get into the rest of the offense. Brian Robinson was one to watch. 12 carries for 40 yards, 3.3 average. He had a touchdown as well. And then in the passing game, 3 catches for 49 yards, his longest being a 32-yard completion. It was not a great performance on the ground for Brian Robinson. Not as great or not as, I would say, not as a efficient performance as I thought he would have. But again, the offensive line throughout this game was not good. It was interesting to see how Cliff Kingsbury and Dan Quinn wanted to rotate the offensive tackles, particularly throughout the game. You had Cornelius Lucas start at left tackle and Andrew Wiley start at right tackle. And then I want to say it was at some point in the late first quarter, maybe early second quarter, you had Brandon Coleman sub in for Cornelius Lucas, and he played some left tackle. Cornelius Lucas, I think, played both at left tackle and right tackle at some point. I know Brandon Coleman played at both left tackle and right tackle because Dan Quinn said that in the press conference today. So I'll have to look at the exact snap counts at each position for all these players. But you had Trent Scott out there as a third offensive tackle sometimes, which was interesting to see. You had Andrew Wiley, like I mentioned, out at right tackle. Wiley's performance today was abysmal. He had, I believe, 3 pressures within the first, or 3 pressures allowed within the first 2.5 quarters of action, I think. I was looking at the PFF stuff. So I think 3 pressures allowed in the first 2.5 quarters of action. Not good from Andrew Wiley. Expect him to have one of the lowest PFF grades on the team on Monday when the PFF grades come out, or I guess today when this episode comes out. So not good from Andrew Wiley. The interior, Nick Allegretti did not have a great game. Sam Cosmi and Biotish, I didn't really hear much of them, so they probably had fine games. But I know Allegretti struggled as well, especially against the fire zone blitz. It's been something that Washington has really struggled against in the preseason. This offensive line has really struggled against in the preseason, and it continued today. As a unit overall, this offensive line just really struggled as throughout the entire game, and it was kind of. It's still the same problems really as last year. You still keep over some guys like pretty much Andrew Wiley really is just someone that was the only offensive lineman that kind of stayed from last year to this year that really struggled last year. So that's just something to monitor. Brandon Coleman played, I believe, about 15 snaps or so in this one. About 15 snaps or so in this one, while Cornelius Lucas played the rest. So we'll have to wait and see what the decision will be at left tackle for future games, or if they're going to still continue with this rotation, which I think really messed with the communication across the offensive line, especially with these more complicated blitz packages that Todd Bowles was rolling out against Jayden Daniels. So it'll be interesting to see how that goes, because they're playing 6 offensive linemen, and I think 7 offensive linemen in total played in this game, which I mean is interesting. It's interesting, but yeah, the rest of the offense not good in terms of the receivers. Austin Eckler was the leading receiver. The 2 running backs and the tight end were the 3 leading receivers in this one. The receiving unit overall, the wide receiver unit overall, really struggled. Luke McCaffrey had 3 catches for 18 yards. Terry only had 2 catches for 17 yards on 4 targets. Like, I don't know. We've got some problems. If Terry is, if the defense and the defensive coordinator can take Terry out of the game, this receiving room has some major problems. Now, Noah Brown was an inactive. I would assume that's because he's not prepared yet. He's not prepared with the offense and the scheme enough yet to play. But we'll have to wait and see until next week to see if he's actually going to be a factor in this offense. I would assume so, just because the lack of talent in this offense, in this wide receiver room that we've seen, especially today. But Terry only 2 catches. Alameda Zaccheaus had 1 catch for 15 yards, and the preseason GOAT De'Ami Brown 0 catches, wasn't even targeted once. I'd have to see how much he played. I don't think he played a lot, so we'll have to look at that one. But overall, this receiver unit was pretty bad. In terms of, I didn't even realize this, but Tyler Biadasz, sorry, not Tyler Biadasz, Jayden Daniels, 3 fumbles in this one, which is something to monitor. I think 2 of them he fumbled and it went straight out of bounds, so that's just something to monitor. But yeah, the offense overall, yikes, it was bad. It was bad. As far as the defense goes, Bobby Wagner was the leading tackler with 10. The secondary, if the opposing quarterback is given 2.5 seconds or more, or really just more than 2 seconds to throw the ball, this secondary is cooked. We saw it today. St. Juice, I think the only bright spot was St. Juice. I think it was on the second drive for the Buccaneers, and St. Juice pretty much had an interception in his hands. Like, he read the route perfectly. He just dropped it. This defense comes up with 0 turnovers again. Now, that's one good thing from the offense. The offense didn't have any turnovers, but this defense still lacks someone who can create turnovers. And Benjamin St. Juice could not be the one to create a turnover today. Emmanuel Forbes, we got to talk about him. We have to talk about Emmanuel Forbes. It's unfortunate, but I have officially given up on Emmanuel Forbes. I have tried my best over this last year plus now on believing in Forbes, giving him time to develop, new defensive coordinator, all of that. It's not going to work out in Washington. I am not sure if Emmanuel Forbes makes it through this season on the roster. I would not be surprised at some point in the season Emmanuel Forbes gets released, because he's a liability now. He got benched not once but twice in this game. He got benched twice in this game. He was given 3 opportunities, but 2 opportunities, right, to bounce back from a mistake, and he can't do it. He could not do it. First quarter, it was not looking good. He was a liability in the run game, could not tackle, was just getting pushed around by blockers in the run game. They bench him, right? They bench him for the rest of the half. Noah Igbenogany comes in to finish off the half. He comes in the third quarter, and he gets beat by Jalen. Was it Jalen McMillan? I think it was Jalen McMillan. Gets beat by Jalen McMillan and holds on to him, gets a DPI, grabs his face mask, twists his face mask around, double penalized, DPI plus a face mask penalty on Forbes. Very next play, Bucks score a touchdown. Like, I'm done. I'm done with Emmanuel Forbes. I've gone long enough defending him, I would say, but Emmanuel Forbes, it's time. It's time to move on from him. Very tough performance today. Very, very tough performance today. Noah Igbenogany came in and he played better than Forbes. Still not incredible. Sanders still was one who really struggled today. Blown coverage on a touchdown to Mike Evans. I think it was Mike Evans. Blown coverage on a touchdown. Sorry, maybe it was McMillan. It was either Evans or McMillan. But blown coverage, it looked to be cover 3, I want to say. You had Quan Martin rotating down. It started from a 2-high shell. You had Quan Martin on the right side, rotating down to fill one of the flats, and Mike Sanders still doesn't get the message to move up and wide open in the corner. It was a nice low post route from or corner route really from whoever the receiver was, whether it be Evans or McMillan, and they're just wide open, 40-yard touchdown. So yeah, this defense struggled mightily today. It was bad. It was bad, but yeah, maybe at some point if we can actually have an average defense, I don't know. Maybe. We'll have to wait and see. In terms of sacks, 1 sack on the day came from Cleveland Farrell. Jerron Payne, Jonathan Allen, didn't hear anything from either of them today. Nothing, really. 2 tackles for Allen, 1 tackle for Jerron Payne. It was a struggle for both of them. Michael Walker had a pretty good day, I would say. He had a good play on the special teams. Frankie Louvu had 5 tackles. He was running all around. Good day from him. Quan Martin had 9. It was kind of an up and down day for Quan Martin. But yeah, it was not a good performance from this defense. I expect more from them. It was a tough to watch. Statistically, it was the worst performance from a defense, efficiency-wise. It was the worst performance from a defense this week. So we'll have to wait and see, of course, because we got Rams, Lions, and then 49ers, Jets. But I don't expect really any of those defenses. Maybe the Rams. But I don't expect any of those defenses to outdo what Washington did today against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So, yeah, pretty bad performance defensively from this team, which is kind of ironic because you bring in a defensive head coach and he brings in a defensive coordinator and stuff to improve this defense from the defense that ranked dead last year. But still a very, very bad performance overall from this defense. So that's what I have to say on that. And then some other takeaways. We got to start with Cade York here. 0 of 2 on field goals. He knocked down both extra points, but he missed from, let me get the numbers. He missed from 50. Hold on. 47 was the first one he missed in the first quarter. And then he missed from, he missed from 50 something, I want to say 56. Again, all right, so 56 is a tougher one, but you see like guys like Brandon Aubrey kicking from 66, which would have been good from like 70 something every week, right? And Cade York is struggling here from the 40s. Washington has a kicker problem. Dan Quinn has said that they could be looking at guys to bring in or looking at the problem to see if they need to bring in, get some guys. But yeah, Cade York misses both of his field goals. We'll wait and see what happens this week. But yeah, it's not good on special teams either. So after 1 week, the Washington Commanders are 0-1. It's bad. It's bad, guys. It is very, very bad. We'll have to see. Again, it's only 1 game, right? It's only 1 week, but overall, this defense doesn't look like it's improved at all from last season. The offense, beyond Jayden Daniels being the entire offense for this team, it seemed like this week. The receiver room has to improve. Maybe that does. Hopefully that does. By maybe activating Noah Brown next week. Johnny Newton hopefully could be a factor for this defensive line down the road as well. He was inactive with a foot injury, still recovering from his injury. But yeah, overall pretty bad. Early on, the only reason why Tampa Bay didn't score a touchdown on every drive, especially in that first half, was because they had their own penalty problems, but Washington had their own as well. 7 penalties for Washington, 7 for Tampa Bay. Yeah, so I guess you could say an evenly officiated game, but not great. In the first half, Tampa Bay had it for 20 of the 30 minutes in that first half, just outperforming Washington on all levels. Dan Quinn said it best in his press conference. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers were the best team today, and that's really what happened. They were the best team today. We'll have to wait and see if Washington comes back with a good win or a bounce back win next week against New York. But the Washington Commanders 2024 season starts with a 37-20 loss to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Yes, that'll be it for today's episode of Keeping Up with the Commanders. Next episode will be out on Friday, previewing the Giants game. Hopefully we'll have a guest on for that, trying to set something up there. But yeah, that'll be it for today's episode of Keeping Up with the Commanders. It was a tough one, tough loss for Washington. That'll be it for this episode of Keeping Up with the Commanders. See you guys next one. Peace.